Cracks in the canvas. Sophia Chen ran her fingers along the silk wallpaper samples, but her mind wasn't on the luxury penthouse renovation she was designing. The afternoon light streaming through her downtown studio windows felt different today. Sharper. More revealing. Like it was illuminating all the things she'd been trying not to see. Her phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. Working late again. Don't wait up. The same message she'd received 3 nights this week, variations of which had become depressingly familiar over the past 6 months. She stared at the screen, remembering when his messages used to make her smile. When working late meant he'd bring her takeout from their favorite Thai place, and they'd eat it on the floor of whatever space. She was transforming, that Marcus. Felt like a stranger now. The door chimed, and her assistant Claire poked her head in. The Patterson Project invoices are ready for your review, and your accountant called about some irregularities in your joint business account. Sophia's stomach tightened. What kind of irregularities? Large transfers to accounts she doesn't recognize. She wants to discuss it with you tomorrow. After Claire left, Sophia pulled up her banking app. The numbers didn't make sense. 50,000 here, 30,000 there, all marked as business expenses, but going to accounts she'd never seen before. Her design firm was successful, but not throwaway money successful. These weren't her transactions, she thought about. The diamond tennis bracelet she'd found in Marcus's Tesla last month. When she'd asked about it, he'd dismissed her with a laugh. Probably fell out of a client's purse, he'd said, already turning back to his laptop. But the bracelet was still in his glove compartment a week later. She'd checked. The door chimed. Again, but this time it was her twin sister Luna. Carrying coffee and wearing her usual all-black ensemble that somehow made her look both professional and slightly dangerous. You look like someone stole your favorite paintbrush, Luna said, settling into the chair across from Sophia's desk. Despite being identical twins, people rarely confused them. Sophia dressed in soft colors and flowing fabrics. Luna preferred sharp lines and dark hues. Sophia created beautiful spaces. Luna investigated ugly truths. I think Marcus is having an affair. The words tumbled out before Sophia could stop them. Luna's expression didn't change, but her coffee cup paused halfway. To her lips, what makes you think that? Sophia told her about the bracelet, the mysterious bank transfers, the late nights that had become a pattern. Luna listened without interrupting, her dark eyes growing more focused with each detail. Have you confronted him directly? I tried. It makes me feel like I'm being paranoid, like I'm imagining things. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. But I'm not crazy, Luna. Something's wrong. Luna reached across the desk and squeezed her sister's hand. You're not crazy, and you're not alone. She paused, studying Sophia's face. What do you want to do about it? I don't know. I love him, but I can't keep living like this. I feel like I'm married to a ghost. Then maybe it's time to find out who you're really married to. That evening, Sophia sat in her pristine kitchen, one she'd designed herself with warm wood tones and copper accents, staring at the business card of a divorce attorney Luna had quietly slipped her. The house felt enormous and empty, filled with beautiful things that suddenly seemed meaningless. When Marcus finally came home at midnight, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers, Sophia had already made her decision. The silent observer Luna Chen had always been the shadow to Sophia's light. She'd learned early that shadows saw things others missed. While her twin sister created beauty, Luna specialized in uncovering ugliness, a skill that had served her well as a private investigator for the past 8 years. The morning after their conversation, Luna sat in her sparse downtown office. Marcus Reed's files spread across her desk like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. She'd spent the night doing preliminary research. What she'd found already made her jaw clench. Marcus Reed, 34, CEO of Nextech Solutions. Net worth estimated at $12 million. Married to her sister for 3 years. On paper, he looked like the perfect husband, successful, charitable, no criminal record. But Luna had learned that the most dangerous lies were often wrapped in the most beautiful packaging. Her first stop was the coffee shop across from Nextech's glass tower. Luna had mastered the art of being invisible, average height, forgettable clothes, a face that people's eyes seemed to slide past without registering. She ordered a latte and positioned herself at a corner table with a clear view of the building's entrance. Marcus emerged at 11:30 a.m. Not alone. The woman beside him was young, maybe 25, with platinum blonde hair and designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent. They weren't touching, but Luna recognized the body language of intimacy. The way he leaned in. When he spoke, how she laughed at something he whispered, the brief moment when his hand brushed her lower back as they entered a black sedan. Luna followed at a distance, her motorcycle weaving through midday traffic. The sedan stopped at Meridian, the kind of restaurant where lunch for two could fund a family vacation. Luna parked across the street and used her telephoto lens to capture photos through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. The woman Luna would later identify her as Ashley Monroe, a marketing consultant who'd worked on 3 of Next campaigns, sat across from Marcus in a booth clearly chosen for privacy. Their conversation looked intense, serious. Not the casual meeting of business associates, but it was what happened after lunch that made Luna's blood run cold. Instead of returning to his office, Marcus drove to Platinum Properties, an upscale real estate firm. Luna watched through binoculars as he met with a realtor, reviewing what appeared to be property documents. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. When Marcus left, he was carrying a manila folder and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who'd just made an important deal. That evening, Luna broke into the offices of Platinum Properties. It wasn't technically breaking, she had friends in security and knew which building maintenance crews could be temporarily distracted. She found Marcus's file in less than 20 minutes. He'd purchased a 2-bedroom condo in Ashley Monroe's name, using funds from an account Luna didn't recognize. The purchase was dated 6 weeks ago. The down payment, $75,000 money. That should have been part of his and Sophia's joint assets. But the real bombshell was in Marcus's phone records, which Luna had obtained through a contact at the phone company. The pattern was clear. Late-night calls to 3 different women over the past year, including Ashley. Text message frequencies that spiked during Sophia's business trips. And dozens of charges at jewelry stores, florists, and high-end boutiques, none of which had resulted in gifts for her sister. Luna photographed everything, her movements efficient and methodical. She'd investigated cheating spouses before, but this felt different, more personal, more urgent. By midnight, she was back in her office, surrounded by evidence of Marcus's deception. But as she reviewed the financial documents more carefully, she realized the affair was just the surface. Marcus had been systematically moving money out of accounts that should have been protected under the prenuptial agreement. He was preparing for something, either a disappearance or a divorce, where he could claim poverty while hiding millions in offshore accounts. Luna reached for her phone to call Sophia, then stopped. Her sister was probably lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was losing her mind. Tomorrow, Sophia would file for divorce. Marcus would likely respond with surprise and hurt, playing the role of the wounded husband, but Luna would be ready for him. She opened a new file on her computer and began typing. Investigation report. Marcus read financial fraud and marital infidelity. By the time she finished, dawn was breaking over the city, and she had enough evidence to destroy Marcus's carefully constructed facade. The only question now was timing. Courtroom revelations. The family court building felt like a mausoleum on that gray Tuesday morning, its marble floors echoing with the footsteps of people whose lives were being dissected by strangers. Sophia sat in the hallway outside courtroom 7, her hands folded in her lap. Wearing a navy blue dress that Luna had helped her choose, professional but not cold, confident but not aggressive. She'd been sitting alone for 20 minutes when Marcus arrived with his entourage. His attorney, Gerald Whitman, was a shark in an expensive suit who specialized in protecting wealthy men's assets during divorce proceedings. Behind them walked Ashley Monroe, no longer hiding in shadows, but brazenly accompanying Marcus, as if she had every right to be there. Marcus looked different today, harder somehow, his usual charm replaced by cold calculation. When their eyes met across the hallway, he didn't even pretend to look apologetic. Ashley whispered something in his ear that made him smile, a gesture so casually cruel that Sophia felt her chest tighten. Mrs. Reed, her attorney, Rebecca Martinez, approached with a reassuring smile. "Are you ready?" Sophia nodded, though ready felt like an inadequate word for facing the end of her marriage in front of strangers. Inside the courtroom, Patricia Kowalski took her seat behind the bench. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that suggested she'd seen every variation of human selfishness that divorce court could offer. "This is the matter of Reed versus Reed," Judge Kowalski announced. "I understand we're here to discuss the dissolution of marriage and division of assets." Gerald Whitman stood first, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Reed, is prepared to offer a generous settlement to Mrs. Reed despite her unfounded accusations of infidelity. We believe a 50-50 split of documented assets is more than fair, given that Mrs. Reed's design business has been largely supported by my client's financial backing." Sophia's attorney countered, but Sophia barely heard the words. She was watching Marcus, who sat with his arms crossed, occasionally leaning over to whisper with Ashley. He looked like a man who believed he'd already won. The preliminary arguments continued for 30 minutes, Marcus's team painting Sophia as an unstable wife, making desperate accusations. They presented financial documents showing his legitimate business expenses and portrayed his late nights as the sacrifice of a dedicated entrepreneur. Judge Kowalski was reviewing the prenuptial agreement when the courtroom doors opened. Luna walked in wearing a charcoal gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase and moving with the quiet authority of someone who belonged exactly where they were. Sophia felt her heart skip. They hadn't discussed Luna attending the hearing. "Your Honor," Rebecca Martinez stood quickly. "I'd like to introduce Luna Chen, licensed private investigator who has conducted an independent investigation relevant to this case." Gerald Whitman shot to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. This is highly irregular. We weren't notified of any private investigation." "Ms. Martinez, what is the nature of this investigation?" Judge Kowalski asked. "Yes. Evidence of financial fraud and asset concealment, Your Honor. Evidence that directly contradicts Mr. Reed's financial disclosures." Marcus's confident expression flickered for the first time. He leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently. Judge Kowalski studied Luna, who stood calmly beside the plaintiff's table. "Ms. Chen, you're licensed in this state?" "Yes, Your Honor. License number 7749, active for 8 years. Luna's voice was steady, professional. "Yes. I've uncovered evidence of systematic financial deception that I believe the court needs to see. I'll allow it, but keep it relevant and brief." Luna opened her briefcase and removed a thick folder. As she approached the bench, Sophia caught Marcus's eye. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely afraid. "Your Honor, over the past 6 weeks, I've documented Mr. Reed's purchase of real estate in another woman's name using marital assets. Transfers to offshore accounts not disclosed in his financial statement. And evidence of multiple extramarital relationships spanning the duration of the marriage." She handed the judge a set of photographs, Marcus and Ashley at the restaurant. Documents from the real estate office, bank transfer records, phone bills highlighting suspicious patterns. Gerald Whitman was on his feet again. "Your Honor, this is clearly a violation of my client's privacy." "Your client waived his privacy when he committed fraud," Luna interrupted smoothly. "These documents show that Mr. Reed has moved approximately $2.3 million into accounts designed to hide assets from this proceeding. The condo purchased for Ms. Monroe alone represents a $1,000 down payment from funds that should be considered marital property." Judge Kowalski studied the documents in silence. The courtroom was so quiet, Sophia could hear Marcus's breathing becoming shallow and rapid. "Furthermore," Luna continued, "I have recorded conversations between Mr. Reed and his business partner, discussing strategies to hide money from the wife during divorce proceedings." She placed a small digital recorder on the judge's desk. Marcus had gone pale. Ashley was no longer whispering sweet encouragements, but staring at Luna with undisguised hatred. Judge Kowalski looked up from the evidence. "Mr. Whitman, does your client wish to revise his financial disclosure?" The courtroom fell silent except for the sound of Marcus Reed's carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. Ashes and foundations 3 months after the courtroom revelations. Sophia stood in an empty warehouse space in the arts district, watching dust motes dance in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through tall windows. The space smelled of sawdust, and possibility a blank canvas waiting to be transformed. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Marcus had eventually agreed to a settlement that gave Sophia 60% of their assets, plus damages for the fraudulent transfers. He'd also faced criminal charges for tax evasion and wire fraud, though his expensive lawyers had managed to negotiate those down to hefty fines and community service. Ashley Monroe had quietly disappeared from the city, their love affair apparently less compelling when it came with legal complications. "It's got good bones," said a voice behind her. Sophia turned to find James Sullivan standing in the doorway, tool belt around his waist and blueprints tucked under his arm. She'd known James. Since childhood, he'd been her neighbor growing up, 2 years older and always building tree houses or fixing broken bikes. He'd become an architect, specializing in sustainable design and historic renovations. They'd reconnected a month ago, when she'd called him about converting the warehouse into her new design studio and showroom. What was supposed to be a business consultation had turned into 3-hour conversations over coffee, then dinner, then long walks along the waterfront where they talked about everything except the obvious attraction growing between them. "The structural engineer says the foundation is solid," James continued, walking over to join her in the center of the space. "We can open up the second floor, create a mezzanine for your private office. Natural light from all sides." Sophia nodded, but she was studying his face more than listening to his words. James had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, calloused hands that spoke of someone who built things rather than just talking about them. When he smiled, lines crinkled at the corners of his eyes, evidence of someone who found genuine joy in small moments. "I keep expecting to feel guilty," she said suddenly. James paused in his explanation of load-bearing walls. "About what? Being happy? Moving on so quickly?" She gestured around the empty space. 6 months ago, I thought my life was falling apart. Now I'm starting my own firm. I have more money than I ever dreamed of. And I'm standing here with someone who makes me laugh until my sides hurt." "Sophia, your marriage ended long before the divorce papers were signed. You're not moving on quickly, you're finally moving forward." She smiled at that. James had a way of cutting through her tendency to overcomplicate emotions. "Besides," he added with a grin, "technically I've been waiting 15 years for you to notice me. So from my perspective, this is moving glacially slow." "You have not been waiting 15 years?" She laughed, but even as she said it, memories flickered. James always seeming to appear when she needed help in high school. The way he'd looked when she announced her engagement to Marcus, how he'd stayed carefully distant during her marriage, but somehow always remained a steady presence at the edges of her life. "Haven't I?" His voice was gentle, serious now. "I was 17 when I realized I was in love with my best friend's little sister. But you were always reaching for something bigger, someone more impressive than the kid next door who just wanted to build you a house with his own hands." The confession hung between them in the dusty air. Sophia felt her chest tighten, but not with the anxiety she'd grown accustomed to. This was different. Anticipation mixed with the strange comfort of finally understanding something that had always been there. "James, I'm not telling you this to pressure you," he said quickly. "I know you're still healing. I just want you to know that when you were married to someone who made you feel invisible, there was someone who saw you completely." That evening, Luna found Sophia sitting on the floor of her nearly empty house, surrounded by paint samples and fabric swatches. For the new studio, most of the furniture had been sold or donated. She wanted to start fresh, create a space that belonged entirely to her. "How did the warehouse visit go?" Luna asked, settling down beside her twin. "James asked me to dinner. Real dinner, not a business meeting disguised as dinner. And I said yes." Sophia looked at her sister. "Is that wrong? Am I being naive again?" Luna studied her for a long moment. "When you talked about Marcus in the beginning, you always mentioned what he could give you, the lifestyle, the connections, the security. When you talk about James, you light up talking about who he is. It's terrifying," Sophia admitted. "With Marcus, I always felt like I was auditioning for the role of perfect wife. With James, I feel like I can just be myself." "Then trust that feeling. Luna said simply. You've learned to recognize the difference between someone who wants to possess you and someone who wants to know you. As they sat in comfortable silence, Sophia realized that for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. New beginnings. 6 months later, Sophia's design studio buzzed with the energy of success. Chen Interiors had already landed 3 major contracts, and her innovative approach to sustainable luxury design was garnering attention from architectural magazines. The warehouse space James had helped her renovate had become a showcase, its self-industrial bones softened with warm textures, living walls that purified the air and furniture pieces that told stories. She was reviewing fabric samples when her assistant announced a visitor. Marcus stood in her doorway, looking smaller somehow in his expensive suit. Prison time had been replaced with probation, but the legal battles had aged him. "Hello, Sophia?" She gestured to a chair across from her desk, noting how he glanced around. The space was something that might have been regret. "This is impressive," he said. "You've built something beautiful here. What do you want, Marcus?" He was quiet for a moment, then, "I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not the courtroom version my lawyers coached me through." Sophia studied his face, searching for manipulation but finding only exhaustion. "I convinced myself I deserved more. That success meant I could take whatever I wanted," he continued. "I lost the best thing in my life because I couldn't see what I already had." "You lost me because you chose to lie and cheat and steal," Sophia said quietly. "But thank you for the apology." Marcus nodded, standing to leave. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, I heard about you and James Sullivan. He's a good man. He'll treat you the way I should have." After he left, Sophia sat in the silence of her studio, surprised to find she felt nothing but mild pity for the man she'd once loved. That evening, she met James at their favorite restaurant, not the expensive places Marcus had preferred, but a small family-owned Italian place where the owner's grandmother still made pasta by hand. James was already there, sketching on a napkin while he waited. "Designing my restaurant?" she teased, sliding into the booth beside him. "Actually designing?" "Our house," he said, not looking up from his drawing. "Hypothetically speaking." Sophia's breath caught as she looked at the sketch a craftsman-style home with large windows, a wraparound porch, and a studio space connected by a covered walkway. "James, ... He set down his pen and took her hands. "I love you, Sophia. Not the version of you that you think you should be. Not some idealized future version. Just you, exactly as you are right now." The words she'd waited her whole life to hear from the wrong person were finally being spoken by the right one. "I love you too," she whispered, and meant it completely. Later, walking along the waterfront under a canopy of stars, Sophia thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, desperate to save a marriage that was already dead, afraid to trust her own instincts. Settling for a love that diminished rather than amplified who she was, Luna had taught her that some people are meant to be shadows, revealing truth in darkness. James had shown her that others are meant to be light, illuminating possibilities she'd never dared imagine, and Sophia had finally learned the most important lesson of all: she was meant to be herself, completely and unapologetically, with someone who celebrated rather than tolerated that truth. The gallery of her old life had been filled with beautiful deceptions. The one she was building now contained only authentic treasures.